Could you please pronounce your name correctly for me?
Yeah, so my name is Shaun Stamp, and I'm from the UK. I'm born in Wales, and I'm currently living in three different places. So I'm a bit of a gypsy right now.
Which actually lends to the question of like, so your childhood. One of the things I always wonder about creative people is sort of how did they get made? So was it parents who were creative, some classes, some life experience, like teachers? Like, how did you even get to being creative?
Oh, well, that's an interesting one. Yeah. So I was brought up in a single family with my mother and two sisters. And my mother was very religious. She's a Jehovah's Witness, and we grew up in this setting. And I remember when I was young, I would sit in the church with her, and I would always just be kind of scribbling, just drawing, because I was so goddamn bored. And there I am blaspheming, but I was bored. And I think it kind of came from that. But then as I look through my family heritage now, like my grandfather on my mother's side, he is very creative. So he was an engineer, and he he experimented a lot with photography too. So when I grew up, he had loads of cameras in his home. And I think I got a bit of that from that side of the family. And then when I look at my father, he's always been creative too. So he's a kind of long-haired, tattooed, like motorbiker. So he's totally opposite to my mother, and he was very creative with doing body panels on cars and motorbikes and drawing, making those kind of drawings on the motorbike tanks and stuff like that. So I think I've got it from both sides.
Lovely. Yeah, my father's a painter and my mother is an interior decorator, so like I know where mine comes from.
Oh, that's great. That's a nice combination.
Uh, yeah, yeah. I mean, because you got the sort of the commercial, a little bit of commercial, and a little bit of pleasing other clients, and then another side of sort of doing things just to please yourself. So it's a nice balance.
Yeah, it is.
All right. Now, the first thing that interests me about you is when I look through your CV, I'm fascinated by the fact that you seem to have, you must have like a lot of air miles because you seem to be everywhere. Um,
Going
I
back to the
saw,
gypsy.
well, I saw Armenia, the UK, Belgium, Finland. I mean, you are everywhere.
Well, let's not forget that Europe is pretty small in like it's easy to get around.
Armenia?
Well, Armenia's on the cusp, it's in the Caucasus. So I did a residency in Armenia after doing a residency in the Netherlands. So after I finished studying my BA, I then decided to move to South Korea. So I wanted to get some experience teaching. And I just thought, actually, I think the best teachers that I've ever come into contact with are the ones who kind of impart life experience. The other teachers kind of go by the book, and you don't necessarily learn anything about life. And I thought, well, I think I'm a little too young to be a teacher just yet, so maybe I need to get some more life experience. So then I then went to do a TEFL, and I went to South Korea and taught English. I was like teaching kids from I think the age of like 13 to 18, and I was 23. So I was thrown in the deep end, and I was kind of like, okay, sink or swim. But I got through it, and I really loved teaching the kids and just like, just engaging with them and just talking about lots of different topics. And then during that year being there, I continued making artwork, and I was kind of trying to get myself into residencies, and because there was this whole other world of artist residencies, and I didn't know how to go about it. And because I just left art school, I was like, how does this work?
You're leading the interview. I love it because that's my biggest question for you is you seem to have done a lot of artist residencies, and I've never done an artist residency, and I'm utterly fascinated with, um, how to choose one, how to apply for one, and then what the sort of, I guess, I don't know, beneficial outcomes, like, sort of like what ones run certain ways that might be better or more useful or whatever for, like, let's say, your work and your style of creating.
Mm. Yeah, that's tricky because I think with a lot of residencies, they have a format and they kind of want you to fit into that format. And those are the ones I found really difficult. And because you want this experience of having a residency, and then you have these ones that have this format, and you're like, well, I don't see how my work can fit into this. And in the beginning, you're kind of like making these applications, and you're like, okay, I'll just kind of squeeze my work in there and try and fit into this. And then you just get lots of rejections, and in the beginning it's quite difficult because you're starting out and you're young and you're like, I'm getting lots of fucking rejections. Okay, maybe my work is not good enough, or maybe
Or
I'm just
you're
more
like
experienced.
getting a lot of rejections. It's just not an age thing.
Well, there is an age thing too, I've noticed in some of them. It's
There
like,
is, there's I kinda resent the ones that say like, "Oh, we only take under 35 years old."
I know, what's that about?
I
Yeah,
don't understand it. Where did somebody choose 35? Why not 40? I mean,
yeah,
it doesn't
why
matter.
not
I'm
50,
47, it's not gonna
60?
help me either way.
I
But
mean, look at some of the best artists when they came out, when they were like in their 50s, 60s, 70s. They just needed time.
which is what a residency would have given them.
That's what it's about, yeah. And that's what I've always kind of been aiming for, is having time and space to kind of, really get into my work. And I found it quite difficult in the beginning, writing for these residencies, and every single one's different. So, you have to change towards the residency on what you're projecting about your plan to be there and what you will make. And that can be difficult because because sometimes you don't know what the hell you're going to make. It's like, well, I just need time first of all to be there, and then I'll kind of figure it out once I'm there. And then my first residency I got when I was just finishing up in South Korea was one in the Netherlands, was in the east of the Netherlands, was in Enschede, and it's a great residency. And I was really lucky to get this. So it was funded, and they give you a small stipend to make work, and it's free. So it's funded by the local government. So you have a place to live, you have a studio, you get to meet the local artists. It's fantastic. And this was my first residency, my first entry into the residency world. And I think that was a really nice step into it.
Give us a little bit of stuff about was it a sort of an individual one, or, like, did you all do group things, like, even just meals? So, like, you know what I'm talking about, like, there's sort of 2 major topics where it's sort of like either a residency seems to be sort of very individually focused, or it's sort of, networking focused, where it's about communicating and collaborating and things like this. So was it which one of those spectrums was it on?
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, this is a while back now, so let me think. So yeah, well, this was a two-person residency. So there was another artist I was sharing with called Jew Underwood, and she's Scottish, and she's still a friend now. And we met back in, what was it 2010, 11, something like this. And we're still friends to this day. I saw her last year. I went to Scotland and saw her, which was lovely. Um, yeah, so with this residency, it's Dutch. So the Dutch are very open-minded. This is what's great about the Dutch, and I love the Dutch. So they're very kind of easygoing people. They love planning out, but when it comes down to it, they want you to be open. They want you to engage with people, but they also want you to make your work. So they try and champion you to have time to invest in your ideas and try and create new things and experimentation. They have a different sensitivity, and they like experimentation. And I think starting out back then, my work was a little bit more abstract. And Jew's work actually was very figurative. And it's funny because now when we both look at our work, we've kind of crossed over. But going back, like how I chose that was just kind of, sending out my application, making a portfolio. And making those portfolios a kind of, the setting to show, whether, you are I'm pulling in commas here, professional artist, because I was starting out. I wasn't professional. I was just trying to learn as I was going along. I would still say I'm not professional in some case. It's like, well, I'm an artist. I'm making my work. I'm kind of doing it as I go along because we're all learning. So for me, I remember making a portfolio for this residency, and it was to do with my oil work, which is my vasculum project, which is making sculptures and paintings with oil, with crude oil and
Mhm.
engineering oils. So I made this project proposal where I had drawings, I had installation images from my degree show, and then I talked about how I thought I was going to use the time there and had, just a very kind of vague plan that possibly sounded like I knew what I was doing or wanted to do.
Well, this is one of my personal concerns when I look at residencies and I look at the applications because I don't even know what kind of work I'm going to be making a week from now, much less a year from now when this residency might occur. And so I'm always afraid that I might write hey, I want to do this. This is the project I want to work on. And then if I arrive and I work on something completely different, that somehow they will disapprove of it, or I will let them down, or I won't, or I'll come up with a project and by the time I get there I realize it's not going to be successful, and I'll fail at it for whatever reason, and so there's all these sort of anxiety and concerns about, like, if you write something, I
Mm.
feel like you're almost sort of promising to do something, and it's whether or not you can deliver on that promise.
Yeah, well, that's always kind of the big pressure, but I think that's always an interesting one. What you said about success and whether it will be a success, but then what is success? That's what I always ask that question. It's like, well, actually, is it a success that I'm just making my work? And I'm getting up in the morning, I'm going to a studio, I'm making my work. That's a huge success in itself, having that time to do that. Right now I don't have my own studio, so that's a different story. But like being able to do that, I would see that as a success. And you're getting to make what you want to make, regardless whether the other people think it's successful. I think you have to do it for yourself first, and then you have to put it out there. And then I think it's always nice to have a dialogue with someone and, get feedback. And, you have a group crit maybe, and someone, gives you something else to think about, something new that you haven't thought about. And maybe you can take it on board and put it into your work, or maybe you reject it and say, no, I'm quite happy with how it looks. Thank you very much.
Oh, and don't get me wrong, a lot of my failure, like my like quote unquote failures, lead me down a path to some better thing, stronger work, whatever. So I mean, my definition of like succeeding in the work or failing in the work in my career span is not so much of a concern because I have lots of failures. But it's that short term of, like, you go to a residency and there's an expectation, like, within that timeline to be able to pull off something strong, something expressive, something completed, and that kind of thing. It quite honestly, it sort of scares slash intimidates me a little bit.
Yeah, because it's similar to putting on a show. And you have a timeline and you're like, okay, I've got to deliver this. Fuck. Okay. Have I got the work ready? Oh, do I have new work to make for it? So there's all these things that's going on.
Is it cohesive? Like, I
Yeah,
mean,
is it
all of it.
cohesive? Yeah. Does it all relate to this, the same theme or subject? There's all these different things running through your head. But I think with the best residencies are the ones that don't demand you to have an end product, an end result, because I think really a residency should be to give you time to experiment, to breathe. That's it. They
Agreed.
shouldn't be putting pressure on you to deliver an end point. Because what I found through residencies is that most of my ideas happen during the residency, but the actual work from those ideas come about maybe 6 months later, a month later, a year later. So it's kind of difficult. With I think with some artists, with some of my friends, those type of residencies work when it's kind of finite, and you get a show at the end. And some artists like that because it gives them pressure to make something, to deliver. And I don't mind those residencies, but I much prefer doing ones that just give you time. Like there's a residency that I was meant to do this year, but unfortunately it's been postponed till next year. But it's a fellowship and it's in Colorado. It's the Anderson Ranch.
Love the Anderson Ranch so much.
Oh, really? Okay, I've not been, so well, I would be going in October, but
It's a
what happened?
beautiful place. I actually did a workshop there back in 2000, and have also had as a guest here actually one of the professors of pottery, Allegheny Meadows. He's been on the podcast, but the place is amazing. It's gorgeous, and they're very nurturing and supportive. It's a fabulous place. It's one of my top places, certainly in America, as far as residencies and workshops.
Yeah, I felt for me that it seemed like the right fit, and because there was no pressure to make an end body of work, it's just they give you time to explore. And I thought, yeah, this is brilliant. This is where I've been wanting for a long time. And I was very lucky to get that spot. And luckily, they have deferred it till next year. So hopefully, I will be going on that next fall. Yeah, the whole place, it kind of reminds me of an art school. They have every single facility. So they'll have painting studios, sculpture workshop, the wood workshop. They'll have a photography studio. They have a CNC studio, a laser studio. It's great. Yeah.
Metal smithing, you can like do bronze pours. I mean, the place is amazing.
Yeah, yeah, they have everything. So I'm going to be a bit like a kid, just like running around, just trying different things. Yeah, yeah, it's going to be great fun.
All right. So let's say now, so like let's say moving forward in your career, if you were to apply or if you were even starting to search for a residency that you want to apply for, what are some of the criteria that you look for? Because like for me, it's always everything's paid for because I find the ones that where they expect us to pay like weekly, lodging and stuff. I'm like, I'm not. That's basically a vacation. I could just get an Airbnb for that. Like, why should I go to go through this process? So, like, what are some of your criteria when you're looking for them?
Well, generally, I'm looking for ones that will give you a stipend. They give you some money to make the work, or if they don't give you that, they give you at least a place to live for free and a space to make your work. I have done some paid residencies, but generally those have been funded through another body. So I've applied for Arts Council funding. So they've paid for those residencies. Like I did one in Finland, which is called Arteles. And this is an amazing place, and because it's not like a normal residency, it's very kind of laid back, but also they have some restrictions. So with communication, with having your phone, it's a bit like a Buddhist retreat where you're not allowed to have communication with the outside world, for a couple of hours, so you can decide, maybe you don't want to have the Wi-Fi on for like 8 hours a day or something like that. And that's really interesting because then it really forces you to be with yourself, and you can talk to the other artists, you can walk around in nature because the setting is so beautiful. It's in the countryside, you have fields and fields that you could just walk off into. But I think with the paid ones like that one, it's worth it. It's worth doing. Some of them, like you said, yeah, you can just get an Airbnb. And you look at some of them and you're like, what are you offering? You're just offering me an empty room. There's no facilities, there's nothing. But with a place like Arteles, they are offering you facilities. They have a wood workshop, they have a photography workshop, they have all of these different studio spaces, and they even have a sauna. I mean, that's great. At wintertime, that's perfect. Which I did actually. I did my residency in the wintertime. And that's how I kind of got to this experimentation stage when I was there, which we'll go into actually, because I feel like you want to ask me a question.
Oh, I was just going to mention that the reason that I got connected with you actually was through Amanda Marchand, who you met at that residency.
Yes, Amanda Marchand. She is amazing. She
Mhm.
is a fantastic photographer, and she really helped me when I was there. She taught me many things that I didn't know about photography because I've always been making photography. I've never considered myself a photographer. I make objects. I'm an artist, but I don't see myself as a photographer because I I haven't fully grasped photography in a sense. It's more like alchemy for me. I'm kind of always exploring.
We did our master's program together.
Okay, so you really go back.
Yeah, we lost touch for a while, but now we're back in touch.
Okay,
But
that's nice.
well, but your point about the alchemy of the different mediums and all this is actually something I wanted to ask you about because I sort of struggle with this as myself. I'm traditionally a photographer, pretty straightforward traditional photographer, but in the past like 8 or 9 years, I've sort of been expanding out into collage, decoupage, sort of layering, painting, sanding, all kinds of other mediums involved in it. And I find it a little difficult because like my work at this point doesn't really fit as photography, but it doesn't really fit as painting. And it seems like you sort of fall into that sort of realm of you do mixed media, you work with photography, you do other things. So I like how do you find it? Like how do you express to the world what you do? Because the art world wants to pigeonhole us. They want to say, oh yeah, they're a photographer and be done with it.
Yeah.
but but
That's
more
what
and
I've
more
struggled
artists.
with.
Well, that's my point, is like more and more artists these days are working in multiple disciplines instead of a
Mm,
single discipline like
yeah.
tradition. So what have you figured out works, and or what kind of problems have you run into with that?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I feel that I've always tried not to be pigeonholed. It's like Christo and Jean-Claude
Jean-Claude.
said, yeah, labels are for bottles, not for people. And, I always stood by that one. For me, I think what I started out in was in painting. And then I went into sculpture and I kind of sat quite happily in sculpture. But then I kind of jumped back over it to the fence of painting and then incorporated it all and then went off into photography. And it's all kind of merges. And then I make installations, I make text, so I don't think that I could ever be one sort of artist. In a sense, I would love to just be a painter and get up each day, you do your painting, that's it. Just very purist, but it's not me. It's not who I am. I'm always exploring.
Well, beyond that, though, my sense is it's not the time. Like, I feel like the times these days encourage creative people to and use and incorporate more disciplines than in the past.
Maybe, but I don't know. When you kind of look back through history, you do see some artists who explored with different medias. Let's say, textbook Leonardo da Vinci. I mean, he explored with many different mediums. He went off and just explored. I mean, Picasso, he was relentless. That man was exploring in everything. So I don't know. I don't know if artists today feel the pressure, the ones in art school, feel the pressure to be multimedia artists. I don't know. I think when I was studying, there wasn't that pressure. There was just this kind of openness to explore different mediums. So it was different.
I graduated with a new genre degree, so like I'm all about interdisciplinary works.
So yeah, you said that you teach. So with your students, how do they kind of see their work being? Do they see it being, one genre, or are they kind of trying to branch out?
Well, I generally teach undergraduate, and oftentimes they are subject-based courses. So, like, it will be a photography course or a screen printing course, or a very. So, we don't really get too much into that kind of stuff at that level. But I feel like by the time they get to the end of their program, there is a lot more, I would call, mixed media interdisciplinary than there are strict sort of like, just a painter or just a photographer or just a based in a direct single medium. They enjoy integrating at least two, like, I mean, I can think of a lot of photographers who use video, a lot of printmakers that use text as well. I mean, so they sort of like to expand their potential opportunities, which this is where the question is like, should we be defining ourselves more precisely or should we be more vague?
I think that's up to the individual.
Well, but unfortunately, we're part of a larger art world that they want to pigeonhole us, whether we want to be pigeonholed or not.
Yeah, I kind of look at it as that I'm making the work and I'll leave that up to the rest to decide what it is.
It's a good attitude to have. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's like you said about your photography, how it's moved into painting, in the surface. So with your photographs, do you actually scratch into them and kind of paint them? So it's a bit like Peter Joe Whitkin, which I love his work, where he
Yes,
like
absolutely.
scratches into the photography and, he paints it. He's one of my heroes.
Absolutely. Yes, me as well.
Oh, really? Yeah, he's great.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I grew up, that was my generation when he sort of came out. That was the inspiration of a lot of my professors at the time as well. So yeah. Yeah, him, Jan Saudak, and a bunch of those others that sort of do that, manipulate. Like, we were photographers and very traditional, but then using some form of manipulation,
Mm,
whatever, that was the word we was big back at that time. Of course, that word's not trendy these days. Whatever.
yeah. These like trendy bite-sized words that we have every decade.
Well, I mean, maybe what they are is they're actually like words that end up in the history will define a movement or a period in art kind of thing. So like that manipulated photography would be like probably 80s and early 90s, and I don't know what the movement will be called.
Whitkin, it's like when you look at his work, in a sense, it's timeless, but it does hark back to the early ages of photography. But then it has lots of symbolism in there. He's a big symbolist, which is part of my work. I make work, that kind of rebounds off symbolist art and Jungian archetype and lots of psychoanalysis. So yeah, he's got it all there. He's got it there. It's great.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
huge fan.
Yeah. Well, my auntie introduced him to me. So when I was 13, my auntie, she's a psychologist, and I went with her one day to one of her lessons at this university that she was teaching, and she left me in the library there, and I was like 13 or 14. And I remember just like sitting down at this large table, and there was lots of other students learning reading. And I was like flicking through some magazine, and then my auntie just dropped these books, huge coffee books, right on the table, and just said, "This is fucking art. Look at it." And then she walked off, and then I was like, "Okay." And then the books, one was Peter Joe Whitkin, one was Francis Bacon, one was
Mhm.
Maplethorpe, and one was H.R. Geiger. And yeah, she kind of blew off the lid for me, but she knew exactly what she was doing, I guess. Because I really didn't know what art was, in a sense. I'd been to the museums. You see all the marbles, the bronzes, all of the old, Baroque, Rococo paintings and stuff.
Well,
And
you're in the UK, so absolutely.
yeah, and that's what art was to me growing up. And then my auntie, who was this black sheep of the family on my father's side, she kind of saw something, I'm guessing, in me, and she wanted to break that out. And she just dropped these books. And I remember opening the Maplethorpe book, and it wasn't just his flowers.
Well, it depends on where the flowers are placed also.
Yeah. And I was still in the closet. And I just remember flicking through these pages, and I was like looking at these images, and I was like just shocked at the fact that I was looking at these explicit images in front of these students sitting around me on this huge table. And I was so aware of myself, and just so conscious and embarrassed, and but then at the same time looking at these images of like Maplethorpe with a whip up his ass, and just saying, but this is art. My auntie said this is art. And trying to grasp it. Yeah, and that was my first introduction to the art world, and to contemporary art, and to the canon of what's been happening.
Oh yeah, that's a great introduction. Joel Peter Wiccan, Geiger, Francis Bacon, and
Maplethorpe.
Maplethorpe. I
Yeah.
mean, that's an astounding spread of styles and interests. Yeah.
Yeah, she really gave me a good introduction. I still thank her to this day.
It's interesting. Oddly mostly monochromatic even too.
Yeah, yeah, in a sense. Well, with Bacon, yeah,
Yeah, Bacon's the
Bacon's,
outlier on
yeah,
that one.
yeah, yeah. But then his figures are kind of monochromatic. The way
Yeah.
they're layered, in a sense.
Moving forward, actually, okay, so you mentioned some stuff about like the these days and trendy words, and or maybe I did, who knows, somebody brought it up. Social media. Do you use it? Do you like it? How do you engage with it? Does it help you? Does it annoy you? Give me some feedback.
It does all those things. It does excite me. It does annoy me. I mainly use Instagram. Social media, I don't use Facebook. I have it. I never use it. Where else do I use? I have Twitter. I really use that too. But with Instagram, it kind of made sense to me because it was so image based, and that's how I communicate, is through images. So that made sense to me. So I've been using that now for, I think, the last 3 years, I think, religiously. And sometimes you get too hooked to it, and you're like, okay, this needs to stop. Okay, I remember my Facebook days when you would just spend a lot of time on Facebook. Okay, but I think with Instagram, it feels more of an open community. That word community, yeah, it's open source in a sense. So you can look at so many different things, different topics, different themes. It's
Well, but there are the community standards that are on these, so there is a limitation to that.
Yeah, it's the Wild West, but you do have those community standards, which God knows what that means, because I don't know what community it is. But I think it's difficult for photographers to show their work if it has something, say a nude. Say if I want to show a piece of my work that has flesh, has nude, it has maybe a chest, it's not, it's just showing a nipple, or,
Or a
it just,
penis or
or
whatever. Like you
yeah,
can't do it.
well, yeah, you can't do it. But then, some of my friends who draw and show drawings or watercolors or stuff like that, and they can show fully explicit stuff. And it's like,
Just the other day I was scrolling through and I saw some paintings that were literally but they were literally a painting of a penis entering a vagina. Like that was the painting. And that was on Instagram and it was fine and it had like 10,000 likes. Like it was just ridiculous. But yet, just like a nude person is being censored. And I'm like, how did that and I know the reason is because the community standards guideline says that if it's a photograph of a real person, it can be censored. If it's any sort of an illustration, a painting, a sculpture, or any sort of representation of that, it's somehow legitimate.
I know, which is, I don't know, it's kind of,
Ridiculous.
it's madness, because when you look at some of the drawings out there, like some of my friends who are fantastic draughtsmen, and they can draw the most photorealistic drawings or paintings, and you'll see like people giving blowjobs, like cocks going into holes and stuff like this, and you're just like, well, how is this allowed? And me just showing myself, or a model, semi-nude or nude, but just not doing anything, in an act, is banned.
What, have you run into any problems with the community standards?
Oh yeah, several times. So I kind of stopped posting because I just got fed up of it. So now what I do is I usually show my work through stories, because it only lasts for, I think it's 24 hours. So most of the time I kind of get away with it.
Get it in and out before they can censor it.
Yeah, and now and then, I've had a couple of censorships from them, but I still continue to show my work through stories. And I kind of like that timeline, because it's like life, where you'll go to an exhibition, you'll see a piece of work, and then, you've left the exhibition, and it's either in your memory or it isn't. And that's why I do my stories. So I just show work, I show what's interesting me, things I've seen, so it just lasts for 24 hours. And then people can see that if they choose, instead of it being, a permanent image on your, layout on your Instagram story, your feed. Yeah.
That can easily be censored at any time ever.
Yes. Yeah. And I've had lots of friends who have been kicked off Instagram because of that. And then they've had to set up new accounts, and they've, lost their old their Instagram page where they've spent years, just kind of curating the whole thing. So then I thought, oh, well, bugger it, I'm just going to show stories. That's it.
Sounds smart. I like it.
Yeah, well, it works for now until they censor me again and kick me out.
Until they build an AI that can do it faster and find it on stories.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Now, I'm not. Well, I'm pretty normal. I'm a white heterosexual man. Have run into any sort of issues with gay or any sort of non-traditional? I'm trying to think of like people being rude, or I don't even know what the word, they trolling and that kind of stuff.
Well, over Instagram, no, actually, no, no. I haven't had
Marvelous.
any of that experience. No, no, no.
Great.
Yeah, you?
Okay.
Have you?
Yeah, I've had people be rude and inconsiderate on Instagram. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't experienced that yet. No, I know some of my friends do, or some of my friends get hit on a lot through it. And I'm
I'm
like,
not
well,
sure
I
that's a
don't get hit
negative
on.
thing.
Why do I get hit on? No one approaches me.
Yeah. No, I never put pictures of myself, so that's not going to happen. So I I
Should
have a
try it
face for
sometime.
radio. No, no, it's
You can put
not
up
my
the one in the
thing.
background.
Yeah, I was hot back then,
Yeah,
absolutely. But
yeah,
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 no,
yeah.
I'm not that anymore. No, that was my hot period. That was when I was doing heroin and cocaine, and like I was looking good.
You look fabulous, darling. Absolutely fabulous
Thank
for
you, thank you. Well, not only that, but I
but
was
I don't
actually doing.
recommend going back there.
Well, no, but I was also doing a job that was manual labor at the time. So I was a tour. I was a roadie for bands, and so I was
Oh
touring around with
wow.
rock and roll bands, like setting up the stages and the sound and everything. So it was like all just like brute force,
Yeah, exercising the lungs.
hired as a muscle, not a. I was. We joked that roadies are basically hired from the neck down. they don't pay us to think. We're just there to push things and put things in place. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
but it must have been fun. It must have been a lot of fun.
I have amazing stories from those times. It was great fun. Yeah. But no, I'm not going back to my heroin, cocaine, roadie days. Those are past.
Yeah, yeah. That's probably for the best, really, because I don't think we'd be talking now.
I don't think I'd have my job as a professor. I don't think a lot of things. I think probably I would lose my wife. Like there would be a lot of things that would happen if that ever happened.
Yeah.
All right. Something else that I noticed on your resume was curating. So you also
Oh,
curate on top of both being an artist and doing your own residencies and creating your own work. You also, work collaborate. It seems like you're not just curating solo, but you seem to do collaborative curating as well. So how did you even get into that, or how were you approached to start it? Give us a little background on that.
yeah, well, I think for years I was always trying to make a group show about various topics. And when I was in Margate, I had a really good friend, Kiara Williams, who basically used to be a gallerist, and then she went back to being an artist, but she still runs like little like pop-ups and things like this, and crits. And I was looking for a space to put on a show, and the theme that I had was about T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland poem. And T.S. Eliot had lived in Margate for a short amount of time to write part of that poem there about Margate. And Chiara was a fanatic about the poem too. So it just made sense. So we both came together, and we had this idea to put on a group show, and we were like thinking of what artists could show who had made work about T.S. Eliot. And then the whole thing, oh God, I think it took like a year and a half to set up. But that was my first run at being a curator and putting on a group show and getting artists together, managing artists. It's funny when you're on the other side and you're like, oh, am I like that too?
Am I that much of a pain in the ass?
Yeah.
Am I like
Am I a
absolutely?
thing? Am I a drama queen? I don't know. But yeah, no, yeah. They're great. Like we all had a great time though. But managing, again, going back to teaching, it's managing. You're managing. It's the same. It's the same thing. It's just a different hat. So basically, it took us like a year and a half to curate this show, to get it together, to find the site. So we managed to get hold of the actual building, the Nayland Rock, which is where T.S. Eliot had written part of the poem. And this was a dilapidated hotel space. This once Victorian, grand hotel, which was like 140 rooms. So it was huge, like 5 levels, and it's right on the seafront. Very dramatic, very beautiful, but the whole place was dilapidated. And the new owners were going to turn it into a new plush hotel. And before they did that, we managed to convince them, could we use this for a T.S. Eliot show? And then we proposed what we were doing to Turner Contemporary, which is the local gallery to Margate. And they were doing lots of satellite things, and they wanted to include us in their program. So then we had to bump her up a little bit more to another, professional level. So for me, that was my first run at curating. And I learned a lot going through that, project planning, trying to delegate with each artist, going to their studios, doing studio visits, seeing what they're making, what they're thinking, having these dialogues, that was a really fun time to do that. It took a lot of time. I really respect curators for what they do. It's something I wouldn't want to do all the time because I make my own work. I would possibly do one again, but maybe in the future at some point. But I'm much more focused on my own work. Making my own work because time is valuable. But for me, I think to curate it's definitely something that I enjoyed experiencing. And Kiara Williams, who was my co-curator, she was a great help to kind of lead and kind of show the ropes, because there's a lot of things that I didn't know and I was learning along the way.
It's very difficult to be, an independent curator these days, especially, like, because there's also a difference between being a curator who works for an institution or works for a gallery versus being an independent where you're, pulling yourself up, trying to find your own funding, trying to find your own support, trying to find get connected with additional artists. I mean, there is so much legwork and meetings and bureaucracy that gets involved in that. It's a very difficult, daunting task at this point.
Oh yeah, and what was difficult was trying to get funding, because we applied to the Arts Council to get funding and they just said, we didn't meet their criteria. And we put in, a whole program of getting schools involved, doing workshops, all of the things that tick the boxes. And then the Arts Council said, well, they couldn't fund us. So then we then had to go back to the artists and say, we're really sorry, we don't have funding, but we're going to put our own money into this, and we've got some private funding too. And it was a real shock, because some of the artists that we had was like Susie Hamilton, and she's a fantastic painter, and her work is really, really strong. We had Wolfgang Tillmans, we had Amanda Marchand, we had Derek Jarman, the Derek Jarman estate, who loaned work to the show, and Paul Knight, who is now based in Austria, or I think he's in Berlin now, and Simon Foxall. So we had all of these great names, these great artists who were participating, and yet the Arts Council weren't ready to support us. But then it was so strange, because on the opening night, we had the Arts Council come, and then when they walked around the building and they saw the show, and they said, oh, we would have funded this. And then we said, well, is it possible to get the money now in like retrospect? And they're like, oh no, you can't, but we would have, but we're funding next time, definitely. Like, oh my
Well, see, but that's the interesting thing is like a lot of times after the fact, people are like, "Oh yeah, I would have supported it." Like, so I always wonder, what's the element that was missing? Like, so what didn't you do, or what criteria didn't you meet that somehow that they didn't grasp your vision enough to initially fund it? Did they ever tell you?
No, they didn't. That's always an interesting one. It's like you just don't know.
Yes, and that is my
Yeah.
biggest pet peeve in the arts world as a general whole, like, because you've gotten grants, you've also gotten awards, you've done residencies, and now you've also done this other thing with this funding project. My problem is we as creators, we are often writing applications and we send them in, and the answers we get are one of two things, yes or no. But if we're given yes, we don't know why we got it. We don't know what we did. What did we write that somehow convinced people? And if the answer is no, we get
Mm.
no feedback on what we did wrong. And so therefore we don't know what we can do better next time. And that's a big gap in the art world that I really wish somebody would address.
Yeah, and sometimes there's no transparency. And sometimes I think it just comes down to who you are, because maybe, they didn't really know who me and Kiara were. They saw the names of the artists of, say Wolfgang Tillmans, Susie Hamilton, Derek Jarman, but they didn't really know who we were, because it was the first time that I was curating. I'm an artist. It was the first time that I was curating. But even though we were part of the Turner Contemporary program, they still weren't ready to really help us. And that was frustrating, because we got to a point where we were like, we either cancel this or we just try and just make it happen. And we were like, we've come so far with this, we just need to do it. And we just got everything together. We just went around, trying to get funding from so many different sources, and just like getting travel passes from the local train company for all of the artists to travel back and forth and things like this. So we were just trying to pull so many strings to just make it happen. and we made it happen, which was great. Then we had a really good reception about the whole show. But it's those things like in the beginning when you're up against a wall in a sense, but then you face that rejection and it's a big hit in the face and you're just like, okay, fuck. But then I think if you can get past that and just keep going, then I think you stand a good chance of, making something happen, which we did.
Yeah, I mean, they always talk about how like part of success in the art world is just continuing to produce. Like not giving up, not being discouraged, whatever, like being able to just continue is a large part of just being an artist.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, yeah, well, this is a very kind of outsider example, but look at Henry Darger. I mean, that guy just produced and just produced.
I love Henry Darger,
Me
man.
too.
He's
He's
amazing.
amazing. But that guy just produced, and sadly, no one knew who he was until the end.
But
Until
he
his
didn't
landlord
make it
found
for
his work.
anybody else though.
No,
But
he
this
made
thing
it
he
for
didn't make
himself, and
he
that was the
absolutely just
beautiful
made it for
thing.
There,
Yeah,
there's a guy, Fred, I think it's Picker, who did this like throne room to the second coming of Jesus Christ that's in Washington, D.C. It was something I saw when I was like 5 years old. And I love this piece because he rented a garage, didn't tell his family. And he built this throne room to the second coming of Jesus Christ that he built from trash from the DC school system because he was a janitor, and then he wrote these like 5 volume books handwritten in a language that only he and Jesus Christ would understand. And then
brilliant.
he died. Well, and then he died, and his family found this, and they're like, "What in the world?" And he did this because he believed it.
Mm.
It was not for public consumption. He didn't think of it as an art piece, but he built it because he just believed he needed to build it. And I love that sort of unwavering passion and drive to produce something, just like Henry Darger.
Yeah, simply for your own pleasure. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah, I think that's how I look at my own work. Is kind of just making it for myself first, and then at times I will pull it into the world. But I make a lot of work that people don't get to see just yet. But I'm just making the work, simply for me because I have things to address. So for me, the work is a conversation. It's a conversation with myself, and then hopefully the work will be put out there in a hope that if there's someone out there who is going through something at some point, it may help them on some level. That's all that I hope that I can achieve with my work.
It's a great aspiration. Yeah. We all want to connect. I mean, that's the thing is to a certain extent, creating of art is a desire for others to relate or feel related some way. We don't feel alone, and they don't feel alone because they then see that somebody else is feeling the same way. Like it's just some forms of connection, just another way.
Yeah, yeah. I totally agree.
All right. My last question though for you is are you represented by a gallery?
No, I'm not at the moment. No,
Okay.
no.
The reason for that question is sort of like, okay, so you make these multimedia things, you do these installations, you work with object-based things. Do you make income from this? Like, is this sustainable at this point, or or do you have other side hustles that you have to do? Because, like, I
Yeah,
teach and I do other things to supplement all this.
yeah. So I have the day job to make the bills, but also I do sell my work. So I'm very lucky in that way that I've been commissioned and also I do sell work. And it was kind of interesting over lockdown period because I actually, for the first time, I sold a couple of works via Instagram, which never had happened. And the works that I sold weren't shown on the feed, but on the stories. The 24-hour thing. so,
So
so,
so you
so
have proof that they work.
yeah, yeah. my little theory of the stories. But yeah, yeah, that was interesting actually. So yeah, I think I've been quite lucky in a sense that, I've managed to sell work and I still continue to sell work and also get commissions. Commissions are always an interesting one because sometimes people will throw a curveball at you about what they want, and then I have to come back to them with what I think they should have. Because I think if you're commissioning someone, there has to be, of course, a dialogue and you're kind of working together. But when it comes down to it, it's the artist's voice. It's coming from me. So that's always an interesting one and kind of a fine line to work
I hate
through.
commissions. I hate them with a passion. I mean, every piece that I've done that I've created as a commission, I'm thoroughly embarrassed by because I just let the client walk all over me and it ended up looking nothing like something that I would produce. So it's a very difficult thing.
Yes,
Like
I
it
can
takes a certain
understand.
kind of personality of the artist to be able to um, effectively collaborate with a commission, basically to be able to listen and sort of push back when necessary and let them tell you when necessary to really create something that both they can be proud of and you can be proud of. That's a very difficult balance.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree there. Yeah, what's difficult is that lead, where, someone says, "Oh, I'd love to commission you, would you, make something with flowers?" And I'm like, "Okay, possibly." I've got this work that I make which is with glow flowers, how about this? And they're like, "No, I want you to make red flowers." And I'm like, "But I have this style of work that I make with red and with glow," and you kind of have to kind of bring them round to you.
Oh, I do figurative work generally, and I've had commissions where people ask me to do landscapes. And then I had a commission one time that somebody called me and asked me to do a pet portrait of their dog, and I was just like, "No." Just no.
Well, you could have made it different. You could have made it
No,
really fun.
no. Oh my god, that's just
You could have
painful. I mean,
blurred the dog out of it.
ugh.
Just blurred lots of layers.
Oh, maybe just the fact that somebody even thought to call me for that, it's just like I was embarrassed. But yeah, no, but I mean but from the artist side, it there's a certain thing like some people have the temperament that they can do commissions, like
Mm,
I know some people that do commissions and they do them beautifully and they are very good with working with the clients to really sort of balance that what they need and how it fits them as artists and they feel comfortable and happy with the results. Like that type of temperament and style is it's a unique trait in people that I do not possess.
mm, mm. Yeah. But what about if someone's commissioning you for a portrait? Because you do portraiture.
Ugh. It's been asked of me, and we haven't fulfilled it yet. Which reminds me, actually, it's here. I haven't done it. It's been years because I think mostly I told people pretty much straight out, like I don't do commissions. Quit fucking asking. So I think they
Well,
just
that sealed it.
stopped asking.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that sealed it.
pretty much. Yeah. But these days, but right now, there is a process that I work with that it would do pretty well for commissions, actually, that I could pull it off. But yeah. Unfortunately, I can't guarantee results, but it's a long story. But the point is, we're here to talk about you. So, so you
That's me.
do commissions, and so people approach you for these, yes?
Yeah, yeah. So it can be for portraits, it can be sculptures. Some of my celestial work, which is glow. So it's a technique that I created when I was in Finland. So when I was in Finland, I was trying to make a glowing garden, and because I spent the whole winter there, so you only get 2 hours of sunlight. So it's quite extreme. So then I had this idea and I was like, oh, imagine if, you could see the garden glowing. That would be cool. Like in MIT, they're doing that now in Boston. So they're creating glowing trees and plants because they want to plan in the future. It's kind of scary. So they want to plan in the future to light up streets with glow in the dark trees, with illuminescent trees and plants. And I had this idea to make like a glowing garden. And then I was looking at like the celestial system too, and I came across birth sign flowers. And I made a whole series of glowing birth sign flowers. So the zodiac. And then from that was then taken with commissions for people. So people wanted, different types of flowers, that would glow. So I think for me, it's still my work, but then I'm just personalizing it for them.
Well, I think the general public has gotten better. I mean, because the commissions I'm talking about are probably 20 years ago at this point. I think the general public has gotten better educated on how to approach an artist to get a commission. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, I think generally the people that approach artists for commissions are kind of art world integrated a bit. I do get now and then some people who will approach me who come up with very run of the mill stuff and I have to decline. But yeah, generally, it's people who are really interested in art and they're interested in the artist and they want to have a conversation with you and they want to kind of get under your skin and they want to know, about you and they want to know, what gives you these ideas and what drives you. And those are the most interesting people I like to work with, is when you get to really go on a journey together and really get to understand the other person.
All right. Any topic that you want to talk about that I haven't brought up or expand on something we've talked about previously?
Not too sure. When we covered the topic of residencies, of applications, I think we talked about that on how to construct them. I
I
think.
asked about it, and I think we sort of just wandered away from that topic before we got to, as I
Keep
do.
going back full
Um,
circle. Yeah.
sure, yeah, yeah. I'd love to hear like how do you construct your applications, whether it's for residencies and or for grants for that matter, because I know you've done some
Yeah.
of those as well.
Or for galleries too. I think really just you need to spend a lot of time and don't rush things and try and make your proposal, whether it's for a gallery, for a residency, for funding, make it very clear and don't waffle. Try and make it kind of short because people's concentration levels are very short. People don't have time. So you really have to try and deliver something to that person very shorthand. It needs to be concise and small.
Well, like, okay, one thing that I noticed. So I was trained in America, and I now live in Prague. Okay, so I'm in
I love
Europe.
Prague.
I love Prague too. My wife is Czech, so it makes it easy.
Lucky
But
you.
yeah, the thing I noticed was in America, we were generally taught to do flowery language and lots of adjectives and basically be a cheerleader. So like, hey, my work is great because of this, and it's fabulous and marvelous, and you should fund me or whatever. Whereas in Europe, I found that a lot of the grants are very straightforward. They're very fact based. They're very yeah, uh, they're not cheerleading. They don't use a lot of adjectives. They're very much just like this is what I'm going to do, and if you like it, fund it. There,
Yeah, yeah. I don't know about the American system.
it's okay. I'll do be the judgy on
Okay.
American.
Yeah,
That's fine. Not
thanks
you.
for that, for imparting that. But with the Europe system, I think, yeah, we're much more, how would you say, we don't really shout about ourselves. Like, we don't really,
Humble.
that word humble, yes, yeah, yeah, good one, humble. Kind of humble, but, we do try to state, who we are and what we've achieved, but we don't, how would you say, brag about it, or we don't overinflate ourselves.
Whereas in America, we're taught to overinflate ourselves. Like that's what they say to do.
Yeah.
And I find that it's not as good because a lot of us these days were like, if I were on a jury and I were reading one of these applications and somebody was like, "Hey, I'm the greatest this and I do the most fabulous," I'd be like, "Bullshit." Like, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
fuck you and the ego
No.
you wrote it on. But I mean, that's the thing is like they seem to want to know just like what are you doing and why are you doing, like actually Amanda came, she has this great phrase that she uses when applying for things, which was why me and why now.
Yeah,
And I was
she
like,
taught me that one. Yeah,
that's a
yeah, she's great.
fabulous one.
Yeah, she's so good. Yeah, and it just brings it home. It just makes it way more personal.
Hmm.
And I think in today's age, that's what we're looking for more. But there's two sides, there's all the fluff and pop culture. And then there's the other side that are more concerned about nature, about life, about where we're going, about, the planet. We're much more trying to align ourselves with a truth than the pop culture where it's all glitter and charades. And I think Europe's different to Britain. Britain, we're much more, how would you say, I'm humble again. Let's use that word humble, but we're much more kind of privy, and we don't really shout out about ourselves because it doesn't.
Stoic.
Yeah, kind of stoic, but in a sense that we're much more shy, and we kind of mumble. Whereas in Europe, they're much more straight. I love the Europeans. They're just so straightforward and very direct. And the way they analyze things, there's a whole different sensitivity to the
There is.
British mind.
Okay, wait. I have a quick question because I think
Go
you're
for
only
it.
like my second or third UK person. When you're talking to people or doing anything, or does anybody ever ask you who your mentor was?
Oh,
Like what studio you studied in or anything like that? Do you ever get that?
not much. No, no.
Okay. Because in America, nobody asks that. In Europe, I get asked it all the time. And I'm just sort of fascinated. So I wanted to know where the UK sort of falls on that.
No, I think there's an interest of like, oh, who did you, study with, or who did you work with? Because I've worked for several artists, as like a studio technician. So I think there's always an interest in that thread of whose wing were you under, who kind of helped you through, showed you, opened your eyes, and showed you skills. And yeah, I think that's quite important here. And for me, I met Gustav Metzger, who was amazing. He was a very helpful man. He sadly passed away a couple of years ago, but he coined auto-destructive art, and he used acid for his paintings and drawings that would eat the work away. And I was making vasculum work, which was oil, and I was building channels that would paint the canvases or drawings themselves and would create this abstract drawing. And then it would cleanse itself across the canvas or paper and have these kind of rings of time. And I was kind of doing the opposite to Gustav Metzger, but I really loved his work, and I went to meet him and, tried to get a job with him to be a studio assistant, but he already had an assistant. But he was such a helpful man, and we had great conversations. And then I went to work for an artist called Nick Hornby, and he's a sculptor, not the writer. And I was his studio assistant, and I learned a lot from him. And there's other artists that I've learned from, being their studio assistant. And these are important, I think, and because it helps show the thread of your kind of making, of what you've picked up along the way. Yeah, so it happens a lot in Europe too.
Very much so. I mean, even as a teacher, I even like well, I've approached galleries in and around the Czech Republic, and they always say, "Who was your what studio did you studio? You know, who was your master?" Basically, and I'm like, nobody. But but and then
Oh,
I
I'm
even went in
confused.
for well, I went in for a teaching job, and in my on my application form, they actually had they asked for the studio name at
Oh,
my school, so, like, exactly which teacher did I study under, and I'm like, "We don't do it like that in the United States." I didn't have like, a studio that I was in, and it was sort of a fascinating thing, just a cultural difference is all.
yeah. Yeah, I wonder how it is in other places around the world. Yeah, I don't know. It's
Me
interesting.
too, and that's why I keep asking people every time I get them on podcast.
Yeah. So how long have you lived in, the Czech for?
Almost 3 years now.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I was in Abu Dhabi for 6 years before that,
Oh,
so
yeah, I went there, I think it was 2 years ago. Yeah, yeah, I went to Abu Dhabi. It was great.
it's lovely. It's a lot of fun. I recommend, vacationing there is fun.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of peaceful in Abu Dhabi in a sense. Well, I went there, to make work, but, yeah, it was laid back, I found it. Dubai is a different engine. That's
Correct.
something
Yes,
else.
Dubai is a 24 it's like New York City, basically, like
Yeah,
Las Vegas, New York City, put it together.
yeah, just on
It's sort of
steroids. It's just like a grown-ups playground. It's incredible.
yes, it is, absolutely. I generally refer to it as, like, Vegas of the Middle East, like, that's Dubai.
Yeah, it's a good description.
Yeah. All right. Now, last quick little last thing for you, because you mentioned you wanted to be a teacher and you look forward to being a teacher in the future. If you had the chance to be a teacher right now, what kind of advice would you offer younger artists who are still sort of maybe just coming out of school or having some whatever still learning?
Okay, if they're still learning, I would say just keep on playing, just keep on experimenting. Don't try and fit into a box. Don't try to label yourself too early on. Just explore and have fun, and just keep trying, keep failing. Failing is good. You have to keep failing to learn. And if you get rejections, don't worry. You just have to keep on going, because those rejections you learn from. So, don't get put off at the first hurdle. Just keep going.
Or the 100th rejection?
Yes.
So, do you have anything coming up in the near future?
Oh, yeah, I do. So I have 2 shows coming up. The first one actually, which is coming up, is in October. So it's at the end of October. It's in Germany. It's in Kunstmuseum Wolfsburg. So it's my first show in Germany. I'm showing in a show which is about the oral history of the mouth in art and culture. Yeah, it's quite a mouthful. And the title is called In aller Mund, which means on everyone's lips, which is this German phrase, which is when everyone is talking about a certain thing, a certain topic. So basically, in aller Mund is a phrase. And then the whole title for the show is On Everyone's Lips from Peter Bruegel to Cindy Sherman. So it's a very big show. It's a large scale exhibition. And I'll be showing in the section called Luft und Laut, which again, I don't know how your German is.
Not as good as my wife's. My wife's is excellent.
Okay, we should get her in to be a translator.
Mm.
So Luft und Laut means air, sounds, talking, speech. And I'm showing in that section, which I'll be showing with Mariana Abramovic. I think I'm showing with some other artists there, Tony Ersler, Natalie LL.
How did you get this show? What kind of connection or who did you know that somehow got you this? I mean, that's one of those kinds of things. Like I'm always wondering, okay, that's an amazing institutional exhibition with some great, fabulous like icons of the medium. How did you get into that?
Okay, that's interesting because I Okay, let's go back to the portfolio. The portfolio. So, I'm always making portfolios, sending them off, different things. So a gallerist in
Wait. Stop that for a second. When you say portfolio, are you printing a printed physical portfolio, or are you making like a PDF and emails?
Oh, no, I don't have money to be printing them off all day. No, I'm
Okay,
doing
okay,
PDFs, yeah,
okay,
email. Cheap, easy, doesn't cost a thing.
okay. Just being clear, I mean, because for the listeners, like just giving them the exact way you're pulling this off.
I'm sorry, listeners. I'll be trying. I'll try and be a bit more clear. So yeah, so sending off my folio, via email. I rarely send them through the post. It's a bygone era. You do get some residencies actually that still require you to send it by the post, and I'm like, God damn, we're in 2020. Come on.
I had a conversation with somebody just the other day where they were talking about making slides, and I'm like, eh.
Yeah. Pardon? Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, so you send off your portfolio
So I send it off to a gallerist that I met in London, in Cologne, in Germany,
as
and
one does.
as one does. And I don't hear anything for like, a couple of years. So, of course, I forget all about it. And then a year ago, the gallery got in contact and they said, we remembered you had works on the mouth. Could you send us an updated folio? And I'm like, okay. So I just put one together and I just throw it all in. Well, I don't throw it in, but I put some new stuff in. And then I send it off to them. Then I don't hear nothing for another 6 months. And I'm like, well, what was all that one about? And then 6 months later, they say to me, this is very official, being German. This is very official. We had some curators from the Wolfsburg Kunstmuseum who were looking for artists who make work on the mouth and they want to show one of your works. And I was like, okay, this is really okay, this is cool. And they said, oh, they want to show this piece. And they sent me the one. And I was quite surprised actually, because it was a new work I just made. And I wasn't fully ready to show it. I mean, I showed it to them in the folio. It was a digital work because I hadn't even printed them, the photography, I hadn't even printed it. And the title for the work was I Used to Love You. And I'm talking to the camera. Well, I'm shouting at the camera those words because when I was young, I used to be a stutterer and I still stutter.
Didn't notice.
Yeah, I managed to kind of use different words if I know it's going to make me stutter. But what happened was the work that they wanted was a brand new work where I was, shouting at the camera, like, just telling all, just confessing. And I nearly didn't put that piece in the folio because it was so new and it was too close to home at the time. But for some reason, I put it in the folio and they selected that and they wanted to show it. And then the curators then got in contact with me and they said, oh, well, how would you like to show it? And I said to them, well, to be honest, I've only just made the work. I don't know. And they said, oh, well, do you want to have a think? And afterwards, we had this great conversation for like 6 months with the two curators. One is Uta Rukamp and Bertie, and they're both amazing. And we just worked together for over like 6 months, just talking about the work and how it would be. Would it be large scale, small? Just printed and without frames and stuff like this. And they really helped to bring the work out. And now that's going to be on show from the 30th of October to the 5th of April next year. So it's a 6-month show and it's just west of Berlin. So it's like an hour on the train. So it's pretty easy to get to.
Great. And you have another exhibition as well.
Yeah. So I have one coming up in February next year, which is in your old stomping ground, the UAE. And that is in Rak, in Ras Al Khaimah. And that's for the arts festival there, the RAC Arts Festival, and the theme is on hope. And I'll be showing a diptych on sunflowers. So it's self-portraiture with sunflowers, and the sunflower is the symbol of hope. So it's the universal symbol, but was used since 1993, since the Chernobyl disaster. So yeah, that's going to be showing for 3 months. So if anyone is out in the UAE, please go and see it.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Matthew. Thanks a lot. Take care.